to the Wednesday morning reading of the Bible. We are currently in Isaiah, Debbie, chapter.
You got me.
All right.
Barbara's the one that keeps track. Uh-oh.
Well, I want to go look. I think I remember. Anyway, this is the High Mountain Presbyterian Church, and I am Pastor Lou, here serving as the facilitator of this reading and discussion. We have, I've got notes. Have we read 60, which begins, "Arise, shine, for your light shall come.
It sounds familiar.
The glory of the Lord shall..."
I was going to say it's like 60, 61.
No, you're right. We did 61 too.
Okay.
Um,
So 62 maybe?
I don't know. I will give you. I'm going to say it's 62 that we're to read. Yeah. Again, it's another one of these celebration of the renewal of Zion. Yeah, I think that's the one we're at.
You may be correct.
So, let me just ask, is there anybody else on Zoom? I can't see you if you are. Nobody. I'll say hi to Colette, because I know Colette's going to be watching on the live stream. So, how's Ramadan going?
I'll show you a video later. It's so crowded.
Is that right?
Oh my God. I don't want to make you jealous, but
No,
there's
it's-
thousands. Because
Really?
there's 3 different mosques, and in the one that I go to is the biggest one.
Yeah.
There's got to be well over 1,000 people in
Is
there.
that right?
Their parking wall in Eastside Park, they were told they can't park on the grass there. They were all over the streets leading up. And of course, the parking lot was filled in 5 minutes. Now they're parking at Barnard. They said we could park there. It's just unbelievable. But it gets a little later, each night. So now I'm not getting home until just before 11.
Wow. What time does it start?
Well, I try to get there early so I can get a parking space close by, but the prayers start at 8:40.
Wow.
And most of the time you're
40
standing.
to 11. You're standing most of the time.
Yeah, you're standing, listening to the Quran being recited. Each night they do another part. So we're up to part 11 tonight. And then by the end of the month, we should have read there's 30 parts. We'll read the whole thing. But you stand through the recitations and you go through the rakah, the motions of the prayers, and then there's a lot of personal prayer that you do. And then there's, at the end, the imam does personal prayers while everyone is standing in bitter prayer. And that, of course, with what's in the news, it gets long and emotional, and it's been wonderful, really, but it's just so tiring, because everybody's fasting during the day. You get a quick iftar, and you're out the door to get there early to pray.
Well, it's just the
amazing.
contrast of, the responsiveness or the devotion of people to the patterns. Here comes Colette. Hello, Colette.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
We had a little crisis.
Oh.
Yeah, my handyman has a stroke, and I have not heard from his wife or him since he went into rehab, and I was getting very worried. And my daughter
many termites did you kill today?
Are you ready to retire?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah,
Why are you asking me that today?
because you said when you retired, you were going to be a handyman.
You remember that.
Well, okay, you got me on that one. Although, I got some bad news for you. The bad news is that when I retire, I have to move.
That's true.
Because when I retire, I don't have a house anymore.
Oh,
So,
that's right.
I don't know. I mean,
That's his problem.
how close do you want your handyman?
Well, I guess I'd have to give you and the wife the big bed, and I'll go to the other bedroom where it's a single.
All right, well, maybe we could work something out. Let's talk.
Okay.
Oh, my. Well, I think we decided that we're on Isaiah 62. And we're still in this section of where the prophets are, on the one hand, they're celebrating the promise of the restructuring and the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem and the reestablishment of this prominent people who are supposed to be, not supposed to be known for their prowess, but to be known for their service. And then we see how it goes. So, do you want to read, Debbie? Do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not rest until her vindication shines out like the dawn, and her salvation like a burning torch. The nations shall see your vindication, and all the kings your glory, and you shall be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will give. You shall be a beautiful crown in the hand of the Lord, and a royal diadem in the hand of your God. You shall no more be termed forsaken, and your land shall no more be termed desolate, but you shall be called, my delight is in her, and your land married, for the Lord delights in you, and your land shall be married. For as a young man marries a young woman, so shall your builder marry you. And as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Upon your walls, O Jerusalem, I have posted sentinels all day and all night. They shall never be silent. You who remind the Lord, take no rest, and give him no rest until he establishes Jerusalem and makes it renowned throughout the earth. The Lord has sworn by his right hand and by his mighty arm. I will not again give your grain to be food for your enemies, and foreigners shall not drink the wine for which you have labored. But those who harvest it shall eat it, and praise the Lord, and those who gather it shall drink it in my holy courts. Go through the gates, prepare the way for the people, build up the highway and clear it of stones, lift up an ensign over the peoples. The Lord has proclaimed to the end of the earth, say to daughter Zion, look, your Savior comes. His reward is with him, and his recompense before him. They shall be called the holy people, the redeemed of the Lord, and you shall be called sought out, a city not forsaken. This bridal theme going again.
Yeah, for sure. But also this theme that there is a work that God is going to do for this city on this hill, and that the city is going to be, there's very little mention of its mission, of the work it's to be called to. There's very little mention of the people around Jerusalem or around Israel, for whom they're supposed to be created in order to serve. There's none of that. It's all about the building up of the preeminence. I can understand hearing this, I understand more of what Zionism is.
Yep. Make Zionism great again.
Yeah,
It's vindication.
it is. It's,
What it's,
and listen, I mean, the days might be bad, and I think at the time when this is being written, there's no sign of it in the real world. But the promise is here in the Holy Writ. The promise is here that God is going to rebuild this city, and on its walls there will be guards and sentinels that will not sleep 24 hours a day. There will be absolute security, that there will be no threat whatsoever, and you'll be able to plant seeds and harvest fruit and grain, and life will be phenomenal.
that takes care of God's part of the pact. What about their part?
It seems
Says
to be
nothing.
missing. Yeah, it
Exactly.
seems, their part just seems to be to live into it, right? Plant the seeds and eat the fruit and enjoy the benefits of being all these wonderful words: redeemed, vindicated, sought out, a city not forsaken.
And make sure you have sentinels, because nobody can come in. You know, that kind of, what about somebody who's coming in to do business? You let them in? Who do you let in? Who do you?
Yeah, well, how does the safety
How does that work?
accomplished, right?
Exactly.
How is this secure, divine place, like married? We're married to God. We are married to God. So we are God's bride. What is the groom going to let happen to his bride? Like God is never going to let anything bad happen to us. And the
And it's not real. But I guess it's a salve for people who have been hurting. This is what they want to hear, I guess. I don't know.
well, I would imagine they want to hear it unless nothing of it happens.
Yes,
You know.
You can only hear it so long
Yeah.
before you start to go,
Yeah, like nothing's happening here. Who made these promises? And where did this word of promise come from?
It's not realistic, because think of what part of the world we're talking about. It's like a thoroughfare for all the known world's commerce. People have to go in and out, up and down, through that corridor. So you're not realistic when you're saying you're going to keep everybody out, we're going to only enjoy you're going to make an isolated part of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, and
Never
you're
has.
supposed to build a highway, get all the stones off of it so that everybody that's been spread out in the diaspora over the periods of domination and whatever can all find their way home. The road will be laid. You'll all find your way back into the city. And when you get into the city, you can exhale finally for the first time in your life, because God is now completely in control.
Except that discounts all the people who were there before them, because they are kind of the newbies in the area. So, I don't know. It's so
It's hard to know.
prescient and
Yeah.
so pertinent to what's happening in the world today. Everybody wants to hang towards nationalism. It's not possible, especially in a world where you can communicate and get to where you want to go in a couple of hours. You can be across half of the world. So that's never going to work.
Yeah, and there are companies, corporations that are larger than governments.
Yeah.
And they'll make a deal with anybody. They don't have national allegiances. They just have one goal, which is money. Yeah, and everybody's your friend. So these governments, our government, we wake up every day to the reality that we don't really control any of that. We still have the language that makes it feel like we're in control. But,
What we're seeing, we're not.
yeah.
Cooperation should be the aim of all people, but as soon as something happens, and you can't blame people for feeling they want to defend themselves or kind of isolate themselves from the chaos in the rest of the world, you just can't do it. It's not possible.
And this idea of a future, Like, how does a vision of a future sustain us? We always all have like a future. Well, we just can't wait. Like, can't wait till retirement, right?
Right.
So we have a future that we imagine where things will be good, you know. But in the Hebrew world, in the ancient world, for them, it was always a focus around getting back to this theocracy, this city on the hill where God is not necessarily in control, but God's people are in control, and they're faithful to God, and therefore there is security because God is the defender. In the time that elapses between this period of time, which is probably 400 BC, from this time, the temple will be rebuilt and then it will be torn down again. Rome will come to power, and Rome is a global version of God. Only now, Rome says, I am God, and I've arrived. And by the way, you're not my favorite child, and you're not my spouse. You're my slaves. And Rome, you know, the emperor of Rome declares he is God. And so the future that they imagine here in this immediate future never really ever takes place. Never. And so then the Jewish people who experience the presence of Jesus, it seems as if, I don't know if it really happened with Jesus or whether it was the aftermath of Jesus, that this vision of things are one day going to be just fine is transferred from this world to the next world.
Oh, I see what you're
So the vision of the perfect world where there are sentinels on the walls and all will be safe and all will be fine begins to define heaven, and not heaven on earth. And in Christianity, there are these two strains. You know, there are still the social justice strain that sees the responsibility of the people of God to seek justice, establish justice, and, you know, care for the poor and all that. But there's also a very big strain of Christian living, and I don't know how it is in the Muslim faith. I think it's also true in the Jewish faith that, maybe not, because they're so this world, like it's all, the theology is about this world and what's going to happen now. They're still praying for the day when Jerusalem will be restored as the Jewish center of God, and, you know, and all of that will be reestablished. But for Christians, an awful lot of energy, of faith and relationship with God has been transferred into hope for the world to come. It's not going to happen in this world. In fact, I grew up in a Christian community that imagined that it was going to get much, much worse. That life was going to get worse, and the evil was going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then, you know, they would read the book of Revelation and the way they read it uniquely, and things were going to get so bad that God was actually going to have to come back again. And this time, God wasn't going to be, healing the sick. God was going to be killing the bad people. And that becomes, for a lot, especially a lot of American evangelical Christianity, that's the hope of the world. So,
Yeah, well, I think Islam is someplace in between. I think Judaism kind of, well, the broad scope of Judaism, maybe not orthodoxy so much, but concentrates on repairing the world, this world.
right.
And then what you said about Christianity, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you're the expert, I agree with that.
Okay.
But in Islam, there's a feeling that this world, the dunya, this is kind of like not really real.
Mhm.
And when you're in it, you have the instructions to do the best you can. And of course, it's your responsibility to repair what you can repair. So there's part of that tikkun olam, that the Jews talk about repairing the world.
Right.
But then there's also the part that Christianity played and says, but there is something better. Make sure that you do the best you can in this world so that you can enjoy the next. So that it's someplace in between.
Yeah, it's a mixture. And I think Judaism and Islam and Christianity, whether we recognize it or not, we all have borrowed from each other. I mean, there's elements of what are the foundational thoughts in all of us.
Yeah,
You
in
know,
Islam, you're supposed to revere the books that came before you. So that means the Torah, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the Injil, the Gospels of Jesus, and then our own Quran. So it envelops all of that. And as a convert, I get mixed up which stories. I'm reading the stories and I'm thinking, oh, that happened. Oh, was that from the Bible or was that from the Quran?
Right.
Because there's so many that overlap and it's so similar. So there is, between the 3, a definite, seminal origin, and we learn from each other through the years, and sometimes we hate each other, but we're so similar. That's
Yeah.
always the way. You hate the cousin.
Yes, right. And I think it's also, the other similarity is our dissimilarity within our religion. You can't really say much about Christians. Like, Christians,
Right.
they're all over the map.
Exactly.
They are everywhere. Everybody's claiming to be Orthodox. Everybody's claiming we are the definitive historical word of Christianity. And you look at it, and it's as diverse in its understanding and application as it is the same for it's different in itself sometimes more than it is different from other religions.
Yeah.
The differences are huge. And that's why you say, oh, well, it's Christian. It's going to be Christian. This is going to be a Christian nation. I want to go,
Which one?
like, which Christianity? Like, really, which Christianity? The Christianity that says we're just passing through, so to hell with trying to, worry about the environment. God never asked us to do that at all. It's broken. Forget about it. Get out on the street and witness to the love of God in Jesus Christ and get people to commit their life to God, because we're getting ready. We're getting ready for the next life. That's what it's going to be about.
I'm always amazed by all the Muslims that I meet that are always thinking that Christianity is Catholicism.
Right.
Because that's what they have been mostly in this part of New Jersey exposed to. And so they say, oh, well, you were a convert, you were Christian before, you confessed to a priest, and you
Right.
had statues. I'm like, no,
No,
you
none
don't
of that. Not
understand.
that Christian.
And in fact, most Christians in this country are not Roman
Right.
Catholics.
No,
Maybe
most of them are
just in
Baptists.
this area, but,
The largest
right.
Christian contingency is the Baptist, Southern Baptist.
And then they don't understand.
Colette, you were going to say something?
I'm sorry.
I want to see Debbie. I'm only
Hello.
seeing her hands waving.
Oh, sorry.
Just turn the monitor that way a little bit.
Just,
Yeah, push it. Yeah, push that side of
I
it.
don't want to
It
do
won't.
anything where
Yeah, it won't.
turn it off. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, here comes Elaine. Hi, Elaine.
Here. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
You're
I can see your hand waving, but I can't see you.
Elaine, you're muted. We can't hear what you're saying.
Now I'm happy.
There you are.
Sorry, Colette.
I got stuck on the phone with George over in Uganda.
Oh, that's a good excuse.
Is everything okay?
I'm back in the U.S. now.
Good.
Cool.
Well, we were just trying to, we're dealing with Isaiah 62 and this overwhelming vision that the prophet is holding forth, that God is going to just fix it all and make Jerusalem the pyramid top of the world, and everybody who is a follower is going to be safe inside the city walls, and life will be wonderful again. And all the problems that started from the time of the conquest of the land will now finally be resolved. I mean, the vision is grand in terms of what's about to happen. And so we got to talking about the similarities and the differences, both in Judaism against itself, the variety of ways, and in Christianity. And I had said, in my world growing up, we weren't starving to death, but we were definitely among the poor. And we knew it, and that was the way it was. And in church and in the hymns we sang, there was great encouragement and strength for what was going to happen in the future. But it wasn't this future. It wasn't a future on this earth.
On earth, no.
It was a future in the world that was to come, and that's holding on in faith, enduring what needed to be endured. There was little talk at all of what you were saying is in the Jewish call is to stand in the breach and make a difference in the world, but that we are in these, at least these three religions, we are in common that there is a hope for what's next. In this word, what's next is something in this world. It's what God is going to do next year or in the next several years. Just hold on, because everything that's broken is going to be fixed.
The right guy's gonna get elected.
That's exactly right. That's right, because that's the vision we want. And then there is, I think it's true in Judaism, and I know it's true in Christianity because it was the solution to our world. Our world was be faithful, pray, be careful about your behavior. You don't want to, you don't want to be cussing or drinking or smoking or anything like that. But
Dancing.
yeah, dancing, yeah, you don't want to do that either, because all of that is about enjoyment in this world. And that's a distraction. And what you want to hold on to is come to church as much as you can, sing the songs of Zion, of what's coming, but it's all coming at the end of life. And the only thing you're called to do in this life is to witness to others and save other people's lives so that they will come with you into heaven. I mean, and so, it moved from the idea in Psalm 62 is it's going to happen here in this Jerusalem, on this plot of land. It's going to happen. Perfection is going to come. And we'll finally be able to live in absolute peace and sleep at night without worrying about guns or disease or anything. That's going to happen here in Jerusalem and in Israel. Well, a lot of time has passed. Jerusalem was not rebuilt. In fact, the temple was rebuilt, and then it was completely torn down. And the Roman Empire came to power, and instead of God being the guard at the gate, the brutal Roman Empire was the guard, and they were in charge of everything. The Pax Romana. We have declared it is our peace, and you will serve us. And so onto that scene comes Jesus. And it seems to me that Jesus, as you were saying a little bit about the Muslim, Jesus talks about the world to come. He holds out the world to come, which seems to be otherworldly, as a hope, but he also says to his disciples, get to work. What are you standing around gazing up into heaven for? Is his last words to them. What are you standing around? There's a lot of work to be done. And the work to be done was the original mission, to be a blessing to the families of the earth, to fend for the widows and the orphans and the people who don't have someone who cares for them. That's to be you. And keep doing that until I come, until Jesus returns.
I think that's why Islam resonated with me, because I saw that in Islam. It's that kind of Jesus way of do what you can to repair things here, but know that there's something else coming too.
Right.
So there's that, But I think it's ironic when we read this and the image of the shining city on the hill, which Reagan used often in speeches, I guess, to appeal to, I don't know. I guess he knew well enough that evangelicals and other Christians would hear that and it would resonate. But
Well, it sounded biblical, so
Yeah,
so
it passes.
it's like, yeah, that
But to see what happened to the Jerusalem, its city of peace, Salam. Is it a city of peace? It's so far from being a city of the peace. And there is something where the temple stood, Al-Aqsa Mosque. and the mosque of the Temple of the Dome. It's there. It just is a Muslim edifice, but it's still there. I remember hearing a rabbi say, we don't have to rebuild, it's there. I think this guy was so progressive that he thought we should all be able to worship there. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Wouldn't that have been a great mix in the world?
Yeah, I think so, but
But I grew up in the little tiny evangelical Pentecostal community. We were waiting for the mosque to be blown up. You know, we couldn't wait for the mosque to, you know, whether it was going to be an earthquake or whether someone was going to get in there. But that mosque sitting there was the sign of like 666. That was the evil in the world that was ultimately to be destroyed. And then when that mosque fell, that would be the sign that, you know, look to the east gate in Jerusalem, because Jesus is going to come riding, not on a donkey this time. He's going to come with the chariots of heaven, and he is going to wipe out everybody who is our enemy. And the only problem is everybody's enemy is somebody else. And so,
that's what this passage is talking about here. Let's close it off.
yeah.
Let's put the sentinels up and let no one else come in. And I think that rabbi that I heard speaking that day, it stayed with me ever since. This should be a place where all can come. That the promise of peace and you know, and being close to, you know, God, Allah, that should be for everyone. It should be a city of peace. It's too bad it's not. We all get these feelings that we need to defend what we can't manage as human beings to share.
Yeah, and again, the image of this city, okay, the city is going to be rebuilt, and then upon your walls, O Jerusalem, I have posted sentinels. All day and all night they shall never be silent. You who remind the Lord take no rest. So the sentinels are to sit on top of the walls, but they're not going to be silent. They're going to be communicating to God to say, oh, there's a threat approaching from the north. There's a threat approaching from the south. And then God would be awakened to come and defend the city. It'll have like one of those, like in Harry Potter, one of those magical domes that goes over the city, and it's impenetrable. You know, the vision that this is the peace that is the hope of the world. But the hard part is to get to the peace which isn't quite so perfect, but is what I want to call it, the compromised peace. The peace that comes from negotiation. That says, well, you have a little of this, and I'll have a little of that, and then we'll have a little of this. And your comments about that the city was supposed to be, you know, a place where there are visions and descriptions of Jerusalem as the city for all people. You know, the place where everybody could come. And Jesus' anger about the temple was that they had blocked the entrance of everybody who wasn't, in their mind, appropriately Jewish. And so the hall of the prayer of the Gentiles was unavailable. It was unavailable to the people for whom it was built for. And I don't see that in this text. I don't see any of that sense of the universality or the preeminence of the city. Why would the city be celebrated? It would be celebrated because it's a place for all people, but not in this vision. This is a place where finally let's see, what are they never going to be called again? They're never going to be called the forsaken. They're going to be called the sought out, so that all these people who have lived and felt neglected and abused by God and forsaken by God will now finally be able to get behind the walls and go, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, you can't touch us. We've arrived.
It's an invitation to conquest.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
And none of the mission is here. None of the mission is here.
Just the expectation that God is going to protect us, but what are you going to do to help yourselves?
Yeah. And how do you identify yourself as the people of God? How do you know who, like you said, how do you know who comes in?
Exactly.
How do you know who gets in the gate?
You know.
Because that was the problem way back when, on the first rebuilding, when the money came from the Persian Empire to rebuild the temple, and then some of the people who were there, and they started to rebuild the temple, and then they didn't want the locals to help build because they felt like they had been, unfaithful to the mission. And so then
Fell apart.
it fell apart, and the temple got torn down again right away. Like,
You can't live in isolation, especially in an area of the world like this, where everybody's got to go through. You're coming from the Far East, you want to get to the Mediterranean, you got to go through. If you go in the opposite direction, North Africa, you want to get to the east, you got to go through there. I mean, they didn't have the Suez Canal at the time.
right. It's a bridge. It's a land bridge that says everyone's going to be tramping through here. And the armies did. The armies that sought to conquer the whole world, they tramped right through there, and then the armies fight back and tramp back the other way, which made Jerusalem an amazing city in terms of its globalism. Yeah, and its experience. But here, the idea is let's restore the city to a place for us, where we can then rule the world.
That was never going to happen. And who would want that? I guess people do. I mean, here we are, the United States, we're supposed to be the only superpower left in the world. Do you really want that? I'd rather be number 2. Because people are not going to go after you. I mean, why would you desire that? Wouldn't you desire to have everyone kind of get along so that you can prosper instead of always having to defend what you have? I don't know. Anyway. But
I think it's a very contemporary competition for these thoughts even today, even right now in our world. If you think about the United States and you think about what does it mean to be great as a nation, and the movement, and I don't even just mean outstanding politicians, I just mean the people on the street or the people in the country who imagine that the strength of a nation is its ability to withdraw from the rest of the world.
right.
We don't need those problems. We don't need the controversies that spring up around all that. We don't. So, let's just isolate and eliminate anybody else's point of view.
Make sure you're armed.
Yes.
To me, I think, and a lot of people say, that the measure of a nation should be how it treats its own people. If people are starving in your streets, if people are being treated unfairly, even though you have great wealth, that's damning. That's not a good mark of a wonderful, great nation. And especially if you're spending a lot of money on armaments to defend your borders and to kill other people, while you still have people here who don't have enough to eat at the end of the day, it says a lot. But there's that tension. There's a lot of people on both sides. I think we're seeing it in our politics. That's why the nation is so divided.
Yeah.
Because people's idea of what a great nation should be do not coalesce.
No.
I think the guy who wrote this seems to think that a great nation should be the one who keeps everybody else out.
Right. Elaine, you look like you were going to say something.
Well, this is just a very unsatisfactory chapter.
Yes, it is.
It is so not Christian,
Yeah, it is. It is.
And if we look at Jesus' life and his sayings, and it's just not this.
Right. It is not this.
I wish I could figure out a way that this is just kind of a, what's the word, a metaphor or some kind of a poetic thing that is not quite as bad as this in terms of
Yeah,
old stuff, you know.
right. I'm with you. I wish there was a way to hear this and to hear it in some sort of a, I don't know, you said like a poetic imagery or something like that. But unfortunately, the language is very graphic, down to earth. It is, God is going to vindicate the ancestral people and set them up in this city, which is going to be inviolable. This is going to be like totally defended, this city that's going to be built. And, in the time of Jesus, the contrast between Jesus and this kind of attitude was right there on the streets with Jesus. And the Maccabean revolt, which took place right after Jesus, was still the remnant of those who believed in spite of what Jesus said. I mean, I'm going to try to tangle with it this week with Palm Sunday. They wanted Jesus to be a king, and they wanted him to be the king of the new city that was going to rule the world. And that, how were they going to rule the world? Well, God was going to give Jesus the power to solve all their problems. He'd already proven that he could feed the people who were hungry in the city. He'd already proven that he was in charge somehow of the health and welfare program. He had his own ministry of health and welfare. He'd already proven that he was the master of money and the taxes. He had an answer for all of that. And so it looked like Jesus was laying a foundation for the new world order. And there were people who couldn't hear it otherwise, even though Jesus himself said, no, you're missing the point.
We're so good at missing the point, aren't we?
Oh my God, I do. I think we are. I do. I think we're still missing the point. And if I can say this in a way and not have you think bad of me, but the problem is that domination and like being in charge and having control and getting in there and fixing it, it's all very exciting. You know what isn't exciting? Sitting down and working out compromises and learning how to understand the other person and learning how to say their side. This is not fun at all. It is not. It's who wants to do that? And, in my idealistic days in college, I wrote a paper on why does every war begin when people refuse to sit down at a table and talk? And why does every war end when they finally agree to sit down at the table and talk? Why is that? Why can we reverse it? Yeah, it's like, no.
Maybe this time it will be different. It's going to be different because we have God on our side.
Yeah, and it is different to negotiate at a table when you've just wiped out hundreds of thousands of Japanese citizens, and you can say, look, we're in charge now, so now you will talk to us, or we've vanquished the idea that the war being pushed from Germany's side was that Germany wanted to rule the world. So you're not going to rule the world. You're not taking over the world. We're not going to let you. Now let's sit down and work out what we are going to do.
And then they argue about the shape of the table and how many seats and
Yes.
who's going to be there.
Yes.
Anything but actually talking.
And they tried, after World War II, they tried to address this issue, which is in this text, which is, should there be a place, should there be a land for the Jewish people? Seeing the decimation that they suffered, should there be a place? Well, yeah, I know, let's make a place. It's sort of like not in my backyard, everybody.
It's
just
obvious, yeah, nobody wanted.
Yeah, just
So,
go,
Go where they first came from. Well, before they got there were people there.
yeah,
And now, before they returned,
There
there's
were
still
people there.
Now, there were always Jews there,
yeah,
but not that many. But you can't go in and take it by force and then mistreat the people who were there before you. We did that here in this
I
country.
know. When
We
you
are
say,
guilty
that's
of
what I was
it.
going to say. When you say you can't, I'm going to say, really?
did.
We can't?
Yeah.
I think we can. And I think that was the plan.
That's the problem though, because how can you say your way is the right way when you've done genocide? And here we see it happening again. Netanyahu doesn't want you to call it genocide, and neither does Biden, but it is. Is there blame on both sides? You bet. But like you said, sit down at the table. The last I heard is that at the table, they want the United States and Netanyahu, and no Palestinians. I mean, so, you know,
Well, and that
You
would,
gotta talk
right, but that
first.
would be just duplicating what set up the problems to begin with.
Exactly.
Because after World War II, the division of the land and the recreation of Israel did not include any political contingency from the people who lived there,
right,
because they were thought of as no people.
right.
I remember hearing a debate, I don't know, 10 years ago. They were talking about the Palestinian problem. And the person was advancing the cause that said, there is no such thing as a Palestinian. There never has been a Palestine. Never. There's never been a
There's a lot of
Palestine.
people who would beg to
Right.
differ.
We created this idea, this group of people, and gave them a name just because they lived in this area. But there are no such thing as Palestinians. That was the argument. And that actually was the view of, I don't know what the committee was that made those after World War II divisions about, you know, who's going to be where and who's going to get what land. They treated the area of Jerusalem and Palestine, Canaan, they treated it as if there were no people there.
You know, it started to go downhill after the First World War with
Right.
the Balfour Declaration, and then all the European powers taking parts of the Middle East and making states of them where it didn't make much sense to the people who were already there.
Right.
And were not consulted. But then after the Second World War, this idea that we need to take care of the Jewish people because look how they've been mistreated, and that was true. But nobody wanted, like you said, to have them come in mass to
Yeah,
their
not in
country.
my backyard. That's
So, of
like,
course, it seems logical that most Jewish people always, I mean, they pray to go to Jerusalem. So, but do it in a way where, you know, instead the British had the mandate of Palestine. It was
Yeah.
called Palestine. I know people who are old that have passports that say they were born in
Palestine.
But it was done in such a way that, I don't know, it was never going to work. The idea was there was supposed to be two states. That never came to fruition.
right. It's like so many things, and you see this image again in the longing of the writing of Scripture, is that the solution will be from the top down. The solution will come from the power and the powerful down to the powerless, and it'll be good for the powerless. It'll be good for those, you know, who don't have any control. But, you know, the people in power will always have the best interests of the people who don't have power. They'll always make decisions for their better interest.
It's like slavery, them trying to say now that slavery was good for the slaves.
Yeah.
We gave them a place to live. We gave them some clothes.
Well, we taught them how to plow. We taught them how to pick cotton.
They probably knew how to do all of that
You know.
better than, you know.
More.
Yeah, more. That's right. So the irony, I can't imagine how it must fall on your ears, Elaine, to hear this idea about who were the African people, you know, and what were their skills. What, you know, it's,
No, they were just, they were just slightly above animals.
yeah, they were just standing around in the woods waiting for something to happen. Right?
Help us, we're getting a free boat ride to the United States, yay.
And it reminds me too of how, again, from the culture of above and the culture of power, how we also treated the indigenous people of South America. And now what we find out is the society of people in South America was advanced beyond our wildest imagination in mathematics and in science. But
In Central America, you know.
yeah, yeah. But it was our idea of we bring it from above. We're bringing the good news. We are the people who bring what the world needs, and empowered by the idea that the church from Europe, the Christian church in particular, was Jesus on earth. This was Jesus arriving. And so, of course, what we want is what Jesus wants in the world.
Slavery?
Yeah.
I think so. But that's the problem.
I remember reading, when you're in seminary, you get to read some really radical theologians. But I remember the liberation theologians from Central America were writing about the cross and why the cross for them is such a difficult symbol. Because the cross was emblazoned on the shields of the soldiers. So their image of the cross burned into them was this invading army who's coming. The fronts of the horses all had the cross on it. The banners that they carried, all was the cross. This is the cross which is coming and crushing your society.
The enemy, yeah.
I mean, and I think about that a lot, even when I look at the cross here, and I think, oh, what does the cross really stand for? Well, in a lot of the world, in 2/3 of the world, the cross was the banner that crushed their civilization and their society.
It's probably like looking at a swastika.
Yeah, like looking at a swastika, right? I mean, I forget what the swastika originally was supposed to mean, but it got compromised and claimed by domination. And so the cross in many places of the world stands for domination and annihilation. How did that happen? It's the cross, for goodness sake. I guess people looked up and they went, well, that reminds us that, they crucified Jesus, so here we go, we're getting them back now. How do ideas develop like that? And how do we get so far away from having any practical application of what it means to be the Christian church, how so far away from what Jesus actually said, from what Jesus talked about that the church should be? Yeah, somebody made Christianity great again.
I like your idea of using the dove instead.
Yeah, the dove, it seems to me that the dove leaps off the pages of the Bible as the central symbol of Jesus.
I think the only problem I see with that is that it definitely feels very Pentecostal.
Oh, the dove? Yes.
And it's not where I am.
So say some more about what that means to you. What does Pentecostal mean to you?
Well, you described what you grew up with. That's what I often see as Pentecostal. Yeah. Very much rules and regs and there's plenty of color,
Yeah.
but it's not, I think it's very, very far away from what I see as the good news of the New Testament of Jesus.
Right. It's interesting. My father, I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, but my father used to talk about the old time Pentecostal, the old time. And he said originally, if you look back at this breakout of speaking in tongues and this sort of ecstatic worship, it was the most free community you could ever participate in. Women were pastors. They had, the whole idea was that the Spirit had broken down all of those rigid and rugged, and in some ways it was almost like, whatever, And he talked about this, how fundamentalism took over Pentecostalism. That fundamentalism captured Pentecostalism and put it in a box and would never free it again.
That makes sense.
And they still exist, Pentecostal churches that are not fundamentalists. They don't have any of those rules about women or about clothing or makeup or any of that kind of stuff. The whole idea is that the Spirit of God has come and we are free. We're free. Now, it's not hedonism. It's not, you can do whatever you want, but the legalism, that's the word my dad used to use, that legalism had taken over the very movement that was supposed to be an end to legalism. And so that's why he left. He left the Pentecostal church for those reasons. He was a pastor for 8 years in the Assemblies of God, and he couldn't abide anymore the legalism that was a part of it. He adopted it so radically. You were not allowed to smoke. Well, my dad was a smoker when he was 16, 17, 18 years old on the farm, and women were not allowed to wear makeup. Well, my mom was a babe, I'm telling you. She out there in Lancaster County, my mother was just, and she knew how to dress, and she always had all the makeup on, and she was beautiful. So when they converted and went out of the Presbyterian church into the Pentecostal church, my dad quit smoking. My mother got rid of all of her jewelry. She stopped wearing makeup of all kinds. And then my father had a pastime of 8mm movies. He was a movie enthusiast, and he had reels and reels and reels of them when they were younger and all that. He went through with an editor and cut out every picture of himself smoking or my mother wearing makeup or dancing. He cut all of that out.
What a waste of time.
I know, what a waste of time. And now, we look back and we go, Dad, we would have loved to have seen that. We would have loved to have known that part of the younger part of your life, but nope. And then when my dad left the Assemblies of God Church, it was very interesting. I always said I really was lucky to have the father and mother that I had, because I went with them in some ways through these transitions. So I still remember coming home from school. My mother had this thing. She was a clean freak. We always had to clean out her pantry. I remember cleaning out the pantry and finding a bottle of wine in the pantry. I was like, what in the world is this? And so all of a sudden, my father and mother are having wine with supper. And then we started having this funny smell in the house. My father started smoking cigars. And all of a sudden, the freedom was returning because they had kicked that legalism out the door. And my mother started wearing makeup again. It mattered to her. I don't think my father was happy about this, but she went back to shopping, and working on trying to be beautiful and caring about those kinds of things, because she wasn't hearing every day that stuff was a sign of the devil. So some of that freedom returned. And I lived through that transformation. I remember my father preaching a series of sermons, which nowadays, you would think he wasn't a Christian or a believer anymore, but he preached a series of sermons about his doubts and about how he was really an agnostic for a period of time. And that was my formative years. Listening to my father struggle with these issues that so many people in faith just, we believe that and that's fine. Nope. There was a book, I don't know if you know the author, Leo Buscaglia. You know that? He wrote a series of books on love. And my father decided in his preaching sequence that in the end, all of Christianity came down to love. It was just love. And he preached sermons, not from the Bible, but from Leo Buscaglia's book about the essential life action of love. Then as he got older, I think he was worried about hell. And he started migrating back in terms of trying to, go back to preach the dogmas of the church. And he left all that skepticism and doubt behind. But I told him, you left me back in the 60s, man. Like, I'm still there. I didn't make that transition out with you. But as they got older, both my mom and my dad sought out more legalistic churches. And my mother especially, who never was particularly enthused about Christianity. And then she became sort of like radicalized, because it was all about heaven. Yeah. And making sure that, all of her children and grandchildren were going to go to heaven. She prayed for us every day, and that was a really big transition back again to what was the old way. So I still hold on to Pentecostalism as there was a time when the celebration of the arrival of the Spirit of God liberated people from the legalism and the fundamentalism that had captured the church, and I think is recapturing the church every day now. I think we've become insane. Did you see The Handmaid's Tale?
No, I understand what it's about.
Yeah, you want to avoid it, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But hold on, because 5 years from now, it'll be right here.
Yeah,
The-
the way to control your society is to control women.
Yeah, and control them especially through religion and through the adoption of what they called Christianity. It's total control. Total. I don't know.
Okay, that makes this election even more important. They say every time, every 4 years, this is the most important.
Right. I know, they're going to have to stop saying that. They're going to have to stop saying that because after a while it doesn't,
People don't want to hear
no, we don't believe it anymore.
it. But I think it's true this time, I really do. It is moving in that direction, and it's scary.
Well,
I just heard on the radio the other day, I was listening to something on the radio about, is it Ghana, I think, is now going backwards with female genital mutilation. They had outlawed it, and now they're going back to saying it should be the rule of the, I think it may have been Gambia. It was one of the G ones. I'm ashamed that I don't remember which one. Maybe it was Gambia. But one of them that had outlawed it, and now is going backwards. And, it's another thing about controlling women. And you go, okay, that's over there, it's here.
it's here, big time.
It's all around the world, it seems that people are moving towards going backwards in, away from progressivism back to fundamentalism, nationalism. There's not gonna be any place to move to if Trump gets in.
I know.
We were talking about that last night. I have a friend that I sit with every evening in Ramadan. She said, I came here when Trump ran the first time. She said, I arrived at my new home in New Jersey. I hadn't even unpacked my bags when I saw Trump won. She said to her husband, look, I didn't unpack yet. Do we want to leave?
You can leave now while you can.
And I think, our family always jokes about where you're going to go if he comes back again. And it's, but running out of places.
Laura and I used to say we're going to go to Canada.
Everybody's.
But you know what? Look
They don't
around.
let you in.
No, but Canada's also got its own issues. There's a movement rising in Canada for the same kinds of concerns. And so now we're focused on New Zealand. Although the Prime Minister, I know, it's far away. But, it was a period of nirvana for them because their Prime Minister was the most progressive, wonderful person. She managed COVID like no other nation did, and there was no arguing, whatever. And now she's resigned and she's gone. So now it's up for grabs again to see which direction, Even New Zealand is going to go. I think as the world gets smaller and smaller, the challenges of those who want to run it all are going to become greater. And you know, it's more realistic now. It is. And the world economy is part of the biggest challenge. You know, there's just nobody big enough to manage it.
Although they try.
Yeah. There was a,
Bezos and
yeah, I forget
Elon Musk.
who when I was younger, my kids were younger, there was a cartoon where the little cartoon character used to go, "I am going to take over the world." And he was, you know, and I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. Now I look around and I go, yeah, there's like 10 or 12 people candidating for that. You know, we're going to run the world. We're going to take over the whole world. So all we need is for Jesus to come back now, right? If Jesus would just come back.
Well, and that's kind of what this passage in Isaiah is saying. But they're not saying Jesus.
No.
They're saying God.
Right,
Come
God
back
needs
and
to come
fix
back.
everything
And
for us.
even just come riding in on the horse and fix it all up. And
Clear the stones off the highway, because here we are.
but unfortunately, Jesus said, "It's in your hands." it's
Exactly.
it's in your
I was gonna think that.
yeah, it's in your hands. So go and do. Stop standing around looking up to heaven. All right, well, I think that's it for today. Thank you for a good stirring of the thought pot anyway.
Yep.
Well, and next week's Isaiah 63,
Yes,
Are you looking ahead?
looks like it's more of the same.
I think it is. I think actually most of these readings, some of till the end have that same, because they're all written in the same period of time. They're not written by even the same author. You know, this is third Isaiah with a variety of authors, but all in the same culture. The ethos of the time was, come on, when is it going to happen? When are we going to be moved back to be like King David, to be in charge of the culture in the world? When's that going to happen for us?
Actually, we did read 63, now that I'm looking at it again.
We did?
That is very, very descriptive. It's who is this coming from Edom, from Borza, in garments stained crimson?
Oh, we did talk about
We
that?
read that. I remember the red,
Yep.
yep.
Well, I don't remember at all talking about this 62. We
No.
must have read it, not liked it, and skipped
I-
over it.
Yeah, because
Yeah. I think
it's
we,
with the wine press and all that,
Yeah,
I think we had read a psalm the night before that had.
right, had this very similar
The
kind of
wedding.
thoughts. Yeah, that's right, the wedding.
So then this one came, and we didn't
Yeah.
discuss it quite as much, and then we went right on to the guy in the red.
All right, well, listen, that's good news, because then we can move quicker towards the end.
Oh, no.
All right,
But it's great that, you know, you can, the value of Scripture is not that it's a stale thing from the past. It has to resonate with us now in the future. And criticisms of Bible studies that I've heard from people who don't understand, or they understand them in a different way, is that you should just study the script.
Right.
And don't, but if it doesn't mean anything to you in your life now, what is the purpose of it? And I think that's what you do here.
Yeah.
And that makes it so relevant, is because we can identify with it. It's living scripture.
yeah, and I feel like it's wrestling with the text until you see it in your present time. You can't just leave this in the past. I mean, this is an ancient word, but it's a timeless word, not because it's true, not because what this prophet says about the rise of Israel is going to happen, but because you see they're struggling with it, and you look around here and you go, oh, and we're struggling with this too. And in the end, as it goes through, as the story goes through, Jerusalem was not rebuilt. It wasn't rebuilt. It was torn down. The Romans desecrated it. And so, you know, you have to take that into view. And I go back to my little lexicon, which is you open the Bible to learn, yes, what God is like, but 95% of it you learn to read what human beings are like. You read the revelation of what human beings are like, especially as they intone the name of God. And I think that's the revelation. I think that's the part for us that is the Word of God to us. Look at this experience, and learn from what they longed for, what they ignored, what they heard and what they didn't hear. How are we then duplicating that? How are we, again, ignoring what the longer longing of the story, which is God seeks to be a blessing to all the families of the earth, not just yours.
Right.
And that God intends or hopes that you will hear that, get excited about it, and be part of the means of that blessing. Entering the world, repairing the breach, and still holding on to a world that will come. I mean, we can still hold on to the idea of a world made new. Nothing wrong with that. But as long as it doesn't take the wind out of our sails for making it new.
Amen.
I think,
Yes?
you're finished, I think that we get, if we are a blessing, the times when I have felt that I was really doing God's will and being a blessing are the times when I had a glimpse of heaven.
Yes.
That's when I feel it's possible.
Yes.
Otherwise, heaven has no appeal to me. I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
That's not where my mind goes. Like, oh, this will all be better. No, it doesn't happen that way for me. But I do feel like there are times when I think, oh yeah, this is really amazing. We're all getting along. We're doing, we're feeling good. And
So,
and this makes me feel like I have that little glimpse.
so is that like being able to participate in heaven on earth?
Yeah,
Heaven in this life?
I think so.
Yeah, and I don't think that if you listen carefully, I don't think the writers and the believers of the Bible rule that out. I don't think they do at all. In fact, the Hebrew people, the Hebrew theology is more akin to that, because the idea is, that heaven can be on earth. You can create the systems of caring and justice, and then you will discover what Jesus called eternal life. Eternal life is life that is worth living forever. It's not about afterlife. That phrase, eternal life, is a quality of life now that feels like, or it makes you wish that it would go on forever. And that's what I hear you describing. There are those moments. They're just, it doesn't last long.
Not usually, but But you know what? Even though it doesn't last long, it is something that continues to encourage and kind of stay with you in some way.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, I agree. And it empowers you. It empowers me.
That's the right word.
You've been there, and you know it can happen again, and you know that it multiplies. It doesn't just stay with you. It goes on from people to people, and that makes life worth living. I don't know. I think,
To me, that's a lot more exciting than thinking about, angels and harps and whatever else.
yeah, and I always wondered, what's the value of streets paved with gold? Like,
Exactly.
that reminds me of gold toilets.
Yeah, not comfortable.
All right, thank you very much. See you
Bye-bye, Elaine.
See you next time. And thank you to those of you who may have listened in. Colette, I know you came back around to pick up the finish of our discussion, and that's good. Have a good day.
Do we know if Barbara's okay?
Yeah, she has company this week. Her son and granddaughter